Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this class for Microsoft Azure Administrator. Now, as I mentioned in our WhatsApp group, today we are starting with configuring the secure access to virtual network. And here I am having multiple topics, and I will start with the topic create and configure the network security group and application security group. Evaluate effective security rules in NSG. Now, what is this NSG, Network Security Group? Network Security Group or NSG is basically another service from Microsoft Azure platform that we use to control the inbound and outbound movement of the traffic over the network. Okay, so basically it is a packet filtering service generally applied either over a subnet or it can be integrated with an NIC also. And it basically check every inbound and outbound traffic, and based on the rule that has been already set or you have configured accordingly, it takes the decision about whether it will allow the traffic to come inside the device or come inside the network, or allow the traffic to go from the device to outside network or internet, or allow to go the traffic from the network to the outside network. Fine. Basically, it's a kind of firewall service. But when I use the term firewall, it can perform a whole lot of things. Apart from the packet filtering, it can provide me features like port forwarding, then network address translation. No, those are the activities cannot be performed through this. Okay, it only take care of the packet filtering mechanism. Now, Azure is telling, do not mix network security group with both NIC and subnet. Fine. As I mentioned that NSG, it can be associated with either a subnet. In that case, every single virtual machine within the subnet, it will be impacted for the rule that you have set in the NSG, or it can be configured with individual NIC that is being associated with the VM that makes the VM a part of the virtual network. Okay, but you should not mix both together in the same network. Let's see how to do that. Let me log into my Azure portal. Just to remember what is my password, now I started login using my username and password. Otherwise, literally I was forgetting about what password I am using. Though this cannot be bypassed, it is already there. Okay. Now to perform the practical activity for this particular class, I will start with creating a resource group, so that every single resource that I am creating, I'll be keeping them inside this resource group, and at the end of the class, by deleting the resource group, I can delete every single resource that had been created for this class. So it will be rg az104 underscore Sunday underscore morning. Okay, now let me create a virtual network first. Okay, I'll be creating a virtual network. Currently I don't think I have any virtual network, so let me create a virtual network. I will click on create. A new wizard has been started. Let me name my virtual network VNet 01, and then I will jump to IP address. I'm not going to use this, instead I'll be using my own network range. And I will rename the subnet. I will put the name as subnet 01, and I will start from 8. Okay, I'm just leaving this one. I'm not doing anything regarding the private subnet, public subnet. I'm not doing anything over here. So let me have one, save, and then let me create one. And once it has been created, then I will create one more subnet. Okay, I will create one more subnet. Okay, it has been created. So I'm returning to home. From home, I'm selecting the management blade of the virtual network, and from virtual network, let me choose my virtual network, and then if I click on subnet, you can see here is the subnet, and I'm going to create one more subnet, and this is also I'm keeping as a standard subnet. I'm putting the name as subnet 02, and here it will be 12. Okay, and this is one activity that we have done in previous classes also. Okay, now I need my network, my subnet, where I'm going to put my resources, a protection from unwanted access. So what I will do, I will just go to the global search, and there I will type NSG, and in the service section you can see it is showing me network security group, NSG. Okay, so you can see I don't have any, so let me create one. And obviously I will choose the same resource group where I am keeping the resources, and I just want to give a name for my NSG. It will be NSG underscore VNet 01. It is the virtual network one that I am going to protect, so I am giving the name NSG VNet 01, and then click on review and create. It will go through the series of validation check, and once it tells validation passed, I will click on create. Okay, so I have created my network security group, and here is my network security group. But let me tell you, the network security group is not yet been associated with anything. Network security group that I have created currently is not yet associated with anything. And as I mentioned, A network security group can be associated either with a NIC or with a subnet, but not with both. And this time I am tagging this network security group, or I am associating this network security group with the subnet that I have created. So let me choose subnet from here, and I will click on associate. I will choose my virtual network, and I will choose my subnet and then click on OK. Now since I am having multiple subnet, one by one I can associate all the subnets of that particular network with this network security group. Anyhow, I will do it later on, and currently I have added only subnet 01. Okay. Now when a network security group gets created, the network security group already come along with 6 number of rules. Okay, come along with 6 number of rules. 3 for the inbound movement of the traffic and 3 for the outbound movement of the traffic. Now inbound movement of the traffic means the traffic which are destined towards the network security group, and outbound means the traffic who is trying to leave the network security group. If you look at the 3 inbound security rule, see there are 2 allow rule and there is 1 deny rule. And similarly, if you look at the 3 default outbound security rule, there are 2 allow rules and 1 deny rule. Now let us see what those allow rules and deny rules are telling. In inbound security rule, the first allow rule is allow VNet inbound. This is just a name. You can give any name. Generally, when we create any rule, fine, the rule holds 5 tuple hash information. So when I say 5 tuple hash information, it is a typical term that has been used in the network security. 5 tuple hash. Now what are those 5 tuple hash? Source IP, destination IP, source port, destination port, and protocol. You know, if you think about firewall, if you think about firewall, there are various kind of firewalls available. Okay, so how they are actually providing us the protection? Based on that, you have stateless firewall, you have stateful firewall, you have different kind of firewall. Okay, now in case there is a stateless firewall, generally the stateless firewall are the simplest form of firewall that we use in our day-to-day life, and they actually function based on these 5 information. What is the source IP, maybe individual IP or network IP. Destination IP may be individual or a network. What is the source port where from the packet is coming? What is the destination port for which service the packet has been destined? And what is the protocol? UDP, TCP, ICMP. So these 5 informations are known as 5 tuple hash. Now network security group usually work based on that principle. It's basically a kind of stateless firewall function. Okay, it provides us a kind of stateless firewall function, and it works with those 5 information. So look at here: port, protocol, source, destination. Now when it's a port, it is not interested about the source port, it is basically interested on the destination port. Okay, destination port, protocol, source network, source address, destination network or destination address. So the first rule is telling if the source is a virtual network of Azure, and also the destination is a virtual network from the same platform, and the network port can be anything for both source and destination, and the protocol also can be anything for the destination. The bottom line is, if the source is virtual network and the destination is also virtual network, then all sort of inbound traffic, they are allowed to pass through this network security group. Number 2, allow Azure load balancer. This is the name, load balancer inbound. Now load balancer is basically another service. Okay, that is another service that control the movement of the traffic. In the next unit we will learn about load balancing. Okay, so it may happen that traffic is first landing on the load balancer, and from the load balancer they are getting redirected to multiple virtual machines which had been placed within a virtual network. So in that case, you may tell whether the traffic that is coming from Azure load balancer, whether they will be allowed or not. And you can see over here, if the source is the load balancer service, so for any destination, all sort of traffic, they are already allowed. So these are the two default allow rule. One is telling between virtual network all sort of communication is allowed, and the second one is telling between load balancer and whatever may be the destination, all sort of traffic movements are allowed. But apart from these two, the rest, source can be any, destination can be any, protocol can be any, port can be any, they all are denied. But at the same time, have you noticed something on the extreme left written as priority? Now what is the priority and what is the impact of priority? See, within a NSG, you may have multiple rule and a packet coming from a source and destined to a specific network may match multiple rule. Okay, the packet may match multiple rule. Then what should be the rule that will get applied to control the movement of that packet? So generally decision is being taken based on the priority. Lower the number, higher the priority, and higher the number, lower the priority. What I mean to say, if there is a traffic movement from one VM to another VM, and both the VM, they are part of virtual network. See, that traffic will match two rules. One is this rule, allow VNet inbound rule, and another deny all inbound rule. Because here also they are telling source can be any network, destination can be any network, so that will be denied. And here they are telling source is virtual network and destination virtual network. In that case, both the rule, they are matching with the inbound traffic. Now out of these two, which will be applicable? Now out of these two, the first one will applicable because the NSG start reading the rule from the lower priority number to the higher priority number, and the first match that always get implemented. And that's why I said lower the number, higher the priority. So when you will start reading the first rule, it will see 65,000 telling VNet to VNet traffic must be allowed. Since it has found a match, it will not further read that the very next is deny. It will allow the traffic to move. And in the same way, if you look at the outbound security rule, there are three outbound security rule also. The first one is telling once again, if any packet is generating from any virtual network and it is trying to leave the NSG for another virtual network, then that is allowed for any service. Once again, from any source, if the traffic is destined for a route called internet, fine, from any source which is getting protected through the network security group, and the traffic is destined towards the path called internet, then that should also be allowed. But apart from these two allow rule, all other sort of outbound traffic, they must be denied. That means if you have a on-prem connectivity, fine, if you have a on-prem connectivity with your virtual network, so on-prem network is not a virtual network, and if from Azure any packet is trying to leave the virtual network and trying to go to your on-prem network, by default they will be denied, because your on-prem network is not routed through the path internet. You need to create a separate route. It will be a user defined route that is required to be taken to reach the on-prem network. And if you do not mention that in your network security group, then all sort of outbound traffic from virtual network to your private network, they will be denied. Why? Because they will fall under the third category, and the third category is telling deny everything. Okay, so let's see what is the impact of this default rule. The impact of this default rule, now you have already seen that I have associated my NSG with my subnet. Fine, I have associated my NSG with my subnet. Okay, so I'm going to create one Linux VM which will have a public IP address, and after that I will try to have access to that VM through SSH. Okay, and let's see whether it is possible or not. Coming back to home, then looking for the management blade for virtual machine. I don't have any. Create virtual machine. A new wizard has started. Resource group, I will choose the one I have created for this class. Let's give a name for our virtual machine. Host 01, region S2S2. Availability option, I'm choosing no infrastructure redundancy. Security type, I'm choosing as standard. Image, no issue, I can keep this image. Then size, I will go by the cheapest one, V1S. In fact, I also have one more. This is cheaper, but if I say cheapest, then this is cheapest. Standard B1 LS. Fine. But I'm not sure about whether Ubuntu 24.04 will work with a VM having only zero point 0.5 gig of memory. So I'm not going to take the risk. Instead, I'm choosing standard B1S. Now I will perform a password based login. I usually use the name as Linux admin. Let me confirm the password. Okay. I want 422 should be allowed. I'm not disturbing anything over here. Fine. I'm leaving it as it is. Now I will directly go to the networking. So this perfectly okay. But have you noticed something? Generally, what happens when we create any virtual machine, the wizard create a network security group and associate that network security group with the NIC. Okay, it associate that network security group with NSG. But this time, look at the information, that is the selected subnet is already associated with a NSG. So there is no need for creating another NSG and associate that one with the NIC. So they are telling none. NIC network security group, none. Okay, so I'm leaving it as it is. I'm not going to click on basic or advanced. I'm keeping it none. Then delete public IP. Okay, no issue. And after that I will click on review and create. Okay, what I will do, I will create one more VM. I will create one more VM because in some next practical what I'm going to show, for that I need two VM. Okay, so since I'm creating the virtual machine, let me create both the VM. Both will have public IP and I want to access both of them through their public IP. Okay, it is done. Returning back to the management blade for virtual machine, it will appear. Now I'm going to create the second one. Same configuration setup, same resource group. The name will be host02. This time automatically it is not coming. So let me type it. No availability zone support. It will be standard. It will be the same Ubuntu system. Perfectly okay. Password. Who is the user? Thank God I got it. Confirm it, and then directly move to networking. Perfectly chosen, perfectly okay. It will be none. Let me check it box and then review and create. At any point it will say Deployment is completed. Okay, so now I am equipped with two different virtual machine. See, currently in my virtual network I am having two virtual machine, and both the virtual machine, they have public IP address, and the subnet that I have used for both the system are same, subnet 01 of VNet 01, and my subnet is protected through NSG. Okay, now let me copy this, and after that, in this laptop I don't have SSH, so let me take the help of PuTTY. Click on open and see what is happening. It is not allowing the inbound traffic, neither on this machine, and oh, it has already told there is a connection error. And if I move to the second VM, so this is the public IP address of the second VM, and if I open another session of PuTTY, type open, and this is also going to give me the same result. Come, correct, see, in spite of the fact that I am having a public IP address, but I have not been allowed to enter. And why? Because if I return back to my network security group, and if we observe the rule that is controlling the inbound traffic, the request to provide access to the VM for SSH, the source is not one virtual network. Fine. The source is not a virtual network. The source is internet. The request is coming from internet. So it is directly matching the third rule. And that's why, straightforward, my request to provide access to the VM is getting denied. Okay, my request to provide access to the VM is getting denied. Then what is the solution? If I want my VM to get access, then what is the solution? Okay, the solution is add a rule, an inbound rule that will specify that the traffic coming for my virtual network for SSH, they must be allowed. Okay, so come to the settings section and choose inbound security rule. And now I'm going to add one rule, and this is an inbound security rule. Okay, let me define the source, and let me see what are the choice that I am having. Source can be any network. Source can be IP address, means a range, that means a range. Source can be my IP address, mean whatever may be the IP address that currently I am using. obviously my public IP address. Okay, or there can be service tags. There can be service tags. Service tags means predefined network type, or predefined type, like internet, virtual network, those kind of things. Okay, I'm leaving it any, because I don't know. If I want my VMs to be made accessible over the internet, then not I'm not sure about, the sources. I'm not sure about the sources. It can be any network. So though it is a little bit risky, because allowing access to the network virtual machines, for having access to SSH from any network, it is little bit risky, making the system vulnerable. But anyhow, I'm leaving it to any. Source port can be anything. The client usually use a random port, so I'm leaving it any. Now what is the destination? Once again, if I choose the destination, see, destination can be any network. Destination can be specific range of IP addresses, or it can be service tag. Now in this case, I want the inbound traffic to be allowed for the virtual network. Any machine that I am having in the virtual network, they must be allowed to get access through SSH. So I'm choosing service tag, and there is a big list. See, big list, and from there I'm choosing virtual network. Okay, tell the name of the service that you want the inbound traffic to be allowed, and here you can see there is a big list. Now if there is any service that is not been listed over there, then you must choose custom and manually define the port. Otherwise, if you choose these services, the popular services, the port will be automatically defined. For example, I want this one for SSH, so if I choose SSH, you can see the port and protocol that is automatically getting defined. Scroll down further. What should be the action? Obviously the action has to be allow, because you are already having an explicit deny rule. Priority, okay, I don't mind to have the priority value as 100. Now give a name to identify the rule, and I will be giving the name very simple. Since it is for SSH, let me give the name SSH. Allow all inbound SSH traffic. Now let us add the rule. So it has added a new rule that from any source, if the traffic is destined for the virtual network for SSH, it must be allowed. But have you noticed that warning signal? I already told, if you allow SSH access from any network, that any, the source, if it is any, that will include internet, and that makes your network virtual machines vulnerable. That's why there is a warning signal. Anyhow, I don't mind it currently, because I just want to see the difference. When there was no rule, all inbound traffic was denied. Now I am having the rule that has been implemented, and now this NSG is providing protection to whom? It is giving the protection to subnet 1, and my virtual machines are part of subnet 1. So let us see the impact. I'm not sure which machine is this one, but I just want to restart the session. The impact of the rule takes a little bit of time. Okay, the impact of the rule takes a little bit of time, hardly a couple of minutes it will take. So let us wait for that moment. Beta, let me close this. Let me close this and start from the scratch once again. Please wait. It has to understand the change. It takes a couple of minutes, maybe one or two it will take to settle it down. Okay, okay, I'm going back to home. From there, choosing host one and going to copy the public IP address of host one, 50. See, it is accepting my request. Linux admin, and here goes the password. Done. Fine, here goes the password and done. And I can do the same for host 2 also. Host 2, copy, open, what happened? Fine, host 1, host 2. Now both are allowed because it is the same rule, and as because both host 1 and host 2 are part of the same subnet, you know, if I go to the virtual network and I choose my virtual network, from there if I choose my subnet, this is my subnet. Fine, and I have associated the virtual network with this subnet. I'm sorry, I have associated the network security group with this subnet. So every single rule of that particular network security group is now applicable for the inbound traffic and outbound traffic of this subnet. Clear? And here also you can see this subnet is associated with NSG VNet 01. Well,
So,
yeah, tell me.
can we associate the subnet directly instead of VNet? Like rule, inbound rule, we mentioned
We
VNet.
mentioned virtual network, huh? And generally, since we keep the now the service tags, fine, they are predefined set, but the ultimate control is actually getting done based on the association. You have mentioned that it is virtual network, okay, but have you noticed that I am also having subnet 2? And if I have a VM in subnet 2, even though the NSG is associated with virtual network, but as because the functional component of the virtual networks are the subnet, and as the NSG is not associated with subnet 2, so even though in the rule it is been told virtual network, it will have no effect for subnet 2. So mainly it will check with whom it is getting associated, okay, with whom it is getting associated.
So if we give access to VNet 01, so there how many subnets are there? All VMs on that subnet will get access.
No, that is the thing that I mean to say. You can't give it access to VNet 01, because VNet 01 is a logical identity. The active component of the virtual networks are the subnets. So when you are trying to associate, have you noticed association cannot be done directly with the network? You must have to select a virtual network. I'm just showing you once again. Just have a look. If I go to the NSG, where is it? NSG. Nowhere they have told that you can associate with the network. Rather, they are telling it can be associated with the subnet. And anyhow, when you are trying to associate, it is showing me this. But have you seen subnet is compulsory? Because this is just a logical entity. You cannot keep a machine directly in a network bypassing the subnet, because subnet is the active component. Subnet is the active component where we are associating the resources, and multiple subnet, they are getting grouped through the virtual network. Or in the other way, we are having a network, but to utilize the components of the network, I need a portion referred to as a subnet. Now it may happen that the subnet may represent the whole network. That is quite possible. But the rules are not associated directly with the virtual network but with the subnet. But when you mention the service tag is not referring to this, it is referring to the entity. That entity is a network. Now which portion of the network is need the protection, that you need to define through the association. Is it clear?
Yes, somewhat. It's clear.
Yeah, I know, because when I also started studying this one, I also initially got confused, because when I'm creating the rule there I'm mentioning virtual network, but once again when I'm trying to associate the component, Hmm. Then why I need to mention subnet? I have already mentioned in the rule that I want the virtual network to be a component. But later on I have understood, okay, the rule is basically trying to understand what is the area that I need to protect. And that is I am providing through the service tag. I need a protection for my virtual network. But now I need to mention which portion of the virtual network that I need the protection. And that is what we are defining through the association component. Okay?
Yeah, we are
Like
good. Hmm.
when you call a mission, My building need a repair. What you say? My building need a repair. Correct? But when the machine come, do you say that the whole building? Maybe you can tell whole building, but you say, see, look at that portion of my building where you need to do the patch up work. That's the part of the building where the activity has to be performed. So it is something like that. When you are setting up the rule, you are telling the protection is required for the virtual network. But when it is the actual part of the implementation, then you have to tell which portion of the network is required the protection. If it is the whole network, then you associate all the subnet, because which part is active, that will be protected, which part is not yet been associated, not yet been used, do you feel that require any protection? No. And that's why they have given that tag associate, where you need to mention about the subnet. Okay, let's continue. So what has happened now? I'm having the NSG that is having a rule allowing SSH access. Now the rule has implemented over the subnet, and within that subnet I am having two Linux machine. So because of the inbound rule, and as because both the VM they are having public IP address, anybody who is aware of the public IP address as well as the username and password, they will be allowed to have the VMs over the internet through SSH. Correct? But I have a small issue over here. And the issue is, I do not want both my host to be accessed through SSH over the internet. I want only host 1 to be accessed, not host 2. I have associated public IP to host 2 because I need host 2 to play the role of web server. And the web component that I am hosting from host 2, that must be accessed over the internet, so I have associated a public IP address. But as because the rule is protecting the entire subnet, and as both the machine they have public IP address and they are part of the subnet, so both the system they can be accessed. So how can I resolve this issue? How can I resolve this issue?
So we allow only host one on the rules.
Absolutely right. That is the easiest solution. Return back to your NSG, redefine the rule, and the destination, instead of service tag, you tell it is a specific IP address. And then tell 172.16.0.4, this will be the only machine that must be allowed. Okay, so I have changed
So
my
32
destination.
means one machine only.
Yes, one machine only.
So it is giving the IP one IP address, but why it is asking for CIDR if we have option only for the one IP?
That is for to be more precise. I have given that subnet. Even if you give only the IP address, it will work.
Okay.
Okay, it is going to work. You may say, sir, why you are rebooting? Actually, just to break the session. From my machine, a session is already been built up. So even though there is a rule, but the session is allowed, and if I don't break it, if I don't come out from here because of that running session, it will still allow my machines to be accessed. So just to come out from the session, I have rebooted the VM. And now let's see what happened. Booting the VM does not take too much of time. They're quite fast. Let me go to host 01. This is the public IP address. Open putty. Put it over here. It is still. Is it still? Oh, it's my fault. It's my fault. It's my fault. I have given a wrong IP. It is 8.4, isn't it? The IP address is 8.4. It's my fault. Host 1 is allowed. Let me have the public IP address of host 2. So requirement is fulfilled. Happy? Requirement is fulfilled. Are you happy?
So if I want to connect this, we have to connect through private IP.
If you log into host 1, and from host 1 you can have access to host 2. That will not be a very big deal because both are within the same network.
Yeah, from one server
Yeah,
SSH to
yeah, that
another
is very much possible.
internal login. Okay, thank you.
But I am not happy. You may be happy, I am not happy
Okay.
because it has increased my burden. Tomorrow, the cloud admin, see, in production environment, what happened? Even they distribute the activities to multiple user, and that's why the concept of role that has come, isn't it? Somebody is VM contributor, somebody is network contributor. VM contributor doesn't handle network. In a large organization, you distribute the workload to multiple administrators. All are cloud admin, but they are taking care of some functionality or some area of the cloud infrastructure. based on the role that has been assigned. So every time the virtual machine contributor is adding a new VM and want them to be accessed for SSH or for whatever maybe the service is, then he has to call you and you have to open and redefine the rule, or maybe need to create a multiple rule, or maybe you will go back to that old concept, let us associate one NSG for every NIC, and that increase the complexity of the configuration setup. See, now if I tell, can you include VM2 also? Got my point? I'm not going to add another VM, but I just meant to mention that now I also need access for VM2. But I also have VM3, VM4, VM5. I do not want them to get access. So you have to return back to your NSG. Fine. You have to return back to your NSG. Then you have to open the inbound rule. Then select the rule which require modification. And there for the destination, you can use a comma separated list of hosts. It will be 172.16.8.5/32, another name you have added. So it has actually increased the complexity. You are going to make a modification in the rule every time, and every time when you make a change in the rule, it takes time for the rule to get implemented, and that can increase the delay to get access to the service, especially in a big production S environment. So this is not the solution, and that's why what Azure has provided you something called application security group. Application security group. Application security group is basically a logical group of hosts. Fine. Application security group is basically a logical group of hosts. Yes, Shuchandar, tell me.
Sir, here you mentioned two network with means comma separator. So in this range, it will be allowed, right?
It's not
As
a
per
range. I'm defining specific IP addresses. If you
okay,
look
okay,
at the way I mentioned about specific IP addresses. These are the IP addresses only they will be
okay, okay.
allowed.
So means to the virtual machine you have mentioned
Yes,
this.
yes, yes. The internal IP of the respective virtual machines whom you want to give an access.
Okay.
Fine. But as I mentioned, every time something is getting added or something is getting removed, and every time you need to make a change into the rule. So your rule will become a dynamic rule.
So one question, we have the range also, no? So we can use the range
My
which
dear, number 4 and number 6 I want to allow, and I don't want to allow number 5. Then if you
okay.
mention
Yes.
4 to 6, will it help?
No, no,
But
no, sir.
yes, if you want to mention 4 to 6, then you can mention the range also. You are absolutely right. So what should be the setting that is based on the need?
Yes, sir.
But my question is, you are every time making the rule change, and that
Yes.
is not a good
Best
sign
practice.
of best practice. Once a rule is been set, it has to be static. But at the same time, you also require the solution that my systems are coming, going, I want to add or remove depending upon my network need. Then what to do? So the solution is application security group. And as I mentioned, application security group is nothing but a logical group of hosts
Okay, sir.
where, as per my wish, I can add or remove host machine. So instead, the rule is getting applied for a network or a particular host or for the entire network, a specific IP. It is actually getting associated with that logical group. And initially, the group doesn't have any host. But when I add host, and that adding host can be done by the VM contributor, does not need the credential of the network contributor. Okay, the VM contributor can take the decision, okay, I'm adding a new machine and I need this machine to be allowed for SSH. So for that, he doesn't have to disturb the network administrator. Simply make the system a member of that particular NSG, sorry, ASG, where SSH is being allowed, and you are allowed for SSH. You don't want the system to be accessed over SSH, remove the system from the ASG and access to your machine will be denied. Got my point? Means for every change in my network infrastructure, I do not have to make the rule change every time. Rule will be fixed. Only I need to add or remove machine to the group to whom the rule has been set. So see how I am doing it. So first I am going to create an ASG application security group. So in the global search I will type ASG. So it shows application security group. You can use application security group to configure network security as a natural extension of an application structure by arbitrarily grouping the VMs and defining network security group policy based on those groups. You can reuse your security policy and scale without a manual maintenance of explicit IP address. The platform handles the complexity of explicit IP addresses and multiple rule set so that you can focus on your business logic. And this is exactly what I was telling. Create ASG underscore SSH. Done. See, you cannot add or remove host directly from ASG. Fine. You cannot directly add. Oh, they have make a change. Now you can add host directly from here. Previously they were not allowing adding host directly over here. Okay, no need, no need. I'm leaving it empty. I'm leaving it empty, but I'm going to make a change in the NSG rule. This is my rule that I have created, and here destination I'm changing to application security group. And I am having only one application security group currently, that is ASG SSH, and I am associating the allow rule with this group and set it. Okay, now I need host 2 to be allowed, not host 1. And how can I do it? Very simple. Look at here. Go to host 2. Fine. Go to host 2. Expand networking. And there you can see it is giving you the provision to choose application security group. So add application security group. And here it gives me the list of application security group that currently I'm having. And I will choose exactly which application security group that I want to associate with. And I want ASG SSH. Considering I'm having multiple ASG, so from here I can choose exactly which ASG or which are the ASGs that I want to associate with. And if I add, then what will happen, since I have added this ASG with myself, so the security rule that has been implemented for this ASG is now been imparted to me. Fine, I have been imparted this security rule, and as a result, just see. But if you try it for host 1, it will not allow. Try it for host 1 and you can see it is not allowing. So there is no need for changing any security rule. If I want host 2 should not be granted access and host 1, what I will do, I will simply remove host 2 from the ASG and I will add host 1 in the ASG, and host 1 will be granted access through SSH. So is it clear, guys? This is what
Yes, sir, almost.
create and configure NSG and ASG and evaluate the effective security rules through the NSG. Okay, let me do one thing. Let me remove this group. Oh, it is in host 2. I'm sorry, it is in host 2. and remove the SSH rule. So I'm basically keeping only the default rules and nothing else. Okay, I'm just keeping only the default rules and nothing else. Now just tell me, oh, another thing. I want to disassociate all public IP addresses from the VMs. Okay, I want to disassociate all the public IP addresses from the VMs. Disassociate delete it, disassociate, and delete. Look, as I already have two VMs created, I'm having a network, fine, everything is fine, and that's why I have not deleted anything, only intentionally I have deleted the public IP address, as if I'm having two virtual machines, but those virtual machines does not have any public accessibility. Fine. They can only be accessed within the virtual network, but they do not have any access publicly. Azure Bastion is basically a kind of service that allow the virtual machines to be accessed over the network through browser. You see, if you use SSH or if you use RDP, both, though SSH, RDP, they are quite secure because they usually create a secure communication channel between the SSH client and SSH server, or RDP client, RDP server. But still, you need to keep the SSH port or RDP port open for your virtual network. And you have already seen, if you do it in internet, that gives that warning signal because it is vulnerable. It is vulnerable. Azure Bastion is actually a service. It's actually a service that uses the principle of jump box. You know, that uses the principle of jump box. Means I first get access to that system, and access to that particular system or environment is very secure, I usually use HTTPS. Fine, I use HTTPS. Through HTTPS, which is already a very secure one, hmm, it is using the TLS encryption, and through the jump box I get access to my internal network without exposing the SSH port or RDP port with internet. Because many organizations they adopt this kind of mechanism, and here within your virtual network, if you want to adopt the similar kind of environment, that the jukebox or jump box will be not jukebox, the jump box will be accessed through HTTPS, and through that you are going to access your internal VMs through RDP and SSH. Then you can take the advantage of Azure Bastion service. I'm just sharing the link of Azure Bastion service with you. Azure Bastion service overview. Shumon, can you mute please?
Okay, sir.
Okay. So this is the documentation regarding the Bastion service. Let me read out. Azure Bastion is a fully managed platform as a service that provides a secure and seamless RDP SSH connectivity to your virtual machines directly over TLS from the Azure portal or via the native SSH or RDP client which is already installed on your local computer. And Bastion is deployed directly to your virtual network and supports all VMs within the virtual network using private IP address. So when you connect via Azure Bastion, your virtual machine does not need a public IP address or agent or any kind of client software. And that's why intentionally I have removed the public IP addresses from my existing VM, because my next goal is to get access to the VMs through RD SSH but over TLS, and for that I'm going to deploy a Bastion station. Okay, I'm going to launch a Bastion station. Now let me tell you, when I'm going to launch a Bastion station, then it will ask me what kind of stock keeping unit that you are expecting for your Bastion. See, the primary service for Bastion is to provide access to my internal virtual machines, access via RDP or SSH over TLS. But when the access has been provided, then what are the features you also need to be included? Based on that, there are multiple stock keeping unit available. For example, I simply want the access. Fine, go for developer. But I need the files that need to be transferred. The files they need to be transferred. Okay. File transfer your requirement, then you have to go for standard. Because file transfer that are not being supported for developer or basic. Okay, so file transfer means simply cut paste or drag and drop, this kind of transfer. Okay, I'll show you. Just go through the document. Here they have mentioned about the benefits: secure connectivity over TLS, protection from the external threat, scalability and flexibility, reduced management overhead, and compliance and audit. Okay, and here they have mentioned about the various stock keeping unit. Developer, it is a free stock keeping unit. Unit is the shared infrastructure recommended for developing and testing. Support one VM at a time and available only in selected region. Basic, dedicated deployment with fixed capacity for production environment with moderate connection requirement. Standard include all basic features plus scalability and advanced feature like a native client, then shareable links, IP-based connection, custom port, file transfer. Okay, and premium include all standard feature plus session recording for compliance and private only deployment. Okay, now what is private only deployment? Look at this architecture. The architecture is actually telling us about the concept of private only deployment. So you need to have a Bastion station, and Bastion station need a special subnet called Azure Bastion subnet. Fine. And get connected to the Bastion station through 443. Okay, and from there you can use SSH or RDP for having access to the internal VMs. Okay, and there are other type of architecture also available: dedicated deployment, then private only deployment, developer deployment. Okay, developer deployment they need Azure portal. Private deployment, it is only applicable for the standard one where the native client support can be activated, and dedicated, this one support both native client as well as Azure portal. And depending upon exactly which stock keeping unit that you have adopted, the services they usually get initialized. Okay, let's do one. Okay, let me tell you, creation of Bastion, it takes a little bit of time. Okay, maybe 10 to 15 minutes it will take to create the Bastion environment. But before that, I need a specific subnet to be created for accommodating the Bastion station. So going back to virtual network, selecting the subnet, coming to subnet section, add subnet purpose as your Bastion. Fine. So Bastion subnet usually have a specific name and you cannot change the name. So it will be for 2 and add. Okay, so I'm having my Bastion subnet ready, and now I will come to home, and from there Bastion. It is available as a separate service, and I can configure it from here. Okay, it is having a separate service and I can configure it from here, or alternatively, if I choose my virtual network, the network foundation also give me the option to create a Bastion. Or if I choose a virtual network, even within the virtual network also you have a setting called Bastion. But this one does not give you flexibility of choosing the stock keeping unit and other. So I normally prefer to do it separately. So I'm going to the management blade for Bastion, and I'm clicking on create a Bastion service. A Bastion can be associated with one virtual network. It cannot be associated with multiple virtual network. So it is a Bastion service for VNet 01. Fine, it is the Bastion service for VNet 01. Now what tier you are going to create, and you can see basic, standard and premium. Now the developer version is not showing over here because you have already seen developer version is not available in every region. Only in the selected region they offer the developer version. But I have the choice between basic, standard and premium. And just have a look, when I choose basic, it gives me the ability to select the count. Fine, that how many virtual machine together is going to create the Bastion cluster. More number of machine and more number of connectivity that can be established. But if you go for a basic gives you no flexibility for the instant count. It is only two. But both standard as well as premium, they give you the flexibility of choosing your number of instances. Anyhow, I'm keeping it standard and I'm leaving it to. Now what is the virtual network that you want to provide protection? So my virtual network is VNet 01, and it will automatically find the subnet because I have already created that one. Okay, I have already created that one. Now configure IP address. Best 10 as because internet facing, it need a public IP address. If you already have a public IP address, unused public IP address, fine, you can use that one. But as I don't have any, so let me create one. I named this one as Bastion underscore VNet 01 hyphen PIP. So that will be the identity of the public IP address that will get associated with my Bastion service. Okay, rest I'm keeping as it is. Now if I go to advanced, here they are actually telling us about what are the service support that you want. You want copy paste, you want native client support, you want IP based connection. So whatever feature that are being supported on your subscription stock keeping unit, you can choose everything or you can choose some, but you still have the provision to select them later on. But please remember, if you are changing something, for example currently I have chosen copy paste and native client support, okay, but I have not chosen shareable link or the other two. But later on, if I think that they need to be added, I can do it quite easily. But once again, the entire infrastructure is going to get rebuilt and it is time consuming. Okay, so review and create. And as I mentioned, it will take time. It will take time, minimum 10 minutes time it will take to get created. So when the look is going to get changed, fine, it will show the deployment page. The service is now getting deployed. What I will do, I will pause the recording and I will once again resume it once it has been created. So let me pause the recording. Okay, so you can see now the deployment has completed and I have resumed the recording also. It actually took round about 10 minutes. It took round about 10 minutes to complete the deployment process. Now if I come over here, Bastion, you see this is the Bastion service that has been associated with my virtual network. Fine, because I'm using the subnet from VNet 01, so now it is actually providing the access to every VM. Let me tell you, every single VM that I'm having within this virtual network, irrespective of their subnet, the Bastion will allow that VM to be accessed through Azure portal as well as through the native station. A native service is basically a command line utility that is required to be initialized from the individual machine. Fine, but getting access over the Azure portal is a easy approach. So just have a look. Here, once it has been created, you don't have too much options. Only the configuration part will help you to do those adjustments. You want to degrade, you want to upgrade, and you also want to add those features that was not been selected at the time of creation. Fine, but once again, let me tell you, if you now want to add Kerberos authentication, it will once again take that 10 to 20 minutes time for getting the change to become effective. Okay, so let's see the impact. Going to the virtual machine, choose anyone. See, no direct public IP address, so not possible to have a direct access to the VM. Then how to access? Just come over here, connect, and can you see this option? Connect via Bastion. Normally this is available, but as now I am having the Bastion, I can take the advantage of Bastion access for this VM. So connect via Bastion. Bastion protects your virtual machine by secure and seamless RDP and SSH connectivity without the need to expose them through public IP address. Okay, so using the Bastion, provisioning state successful. So what protocol you are going to use? Obviously SSH, because they are all a Linux VM. Authentication type is the VM password, username, Linux admin, and the password. Okay, then it is always better to open in a new tab, browser tab. Click on connect and see a new tab that is using HTTPS, and it is actually making you connected to Bastion. You look at the URL, it is connecting you to the Bastion, bastion.azure.com. Okay, and through Bastion you have been granted access to your virtual machine. Fine, through Bastion you have been granted access to your virtual machine. So you are not directly getting access to host 1, rather you are using the Bastion, and if you look at the connectivity, it is using HTTPS. Fine, it is using HTTPS. See, HTTPS. So HTTPS means it is protected through TLS encryption. So what is happening? Azure has already created the Bastion service. So using the TLS encryption, you are first getting to that Bastion station, which technically is known as a jump box, and then your request to have access to the respective VM internally is getting redirected from the Bastion to the respective VM. Now what will happen if somebody steal that ID? Somebody has stolen this ID. By any chance, they manage to get this service. And now they are trying to get access to the VM through the bastion station. See, it is having the session ID, it is having the security IDs, everything. I'm opening the browser and paste it over here. Press enter and see what it tells. Okay, you can't get access to this one. First you need to get access to the portal, you need to get authenticated through the portal, and then only the access to the bastion station that can be established. And that's why it is basically providing you a secure access. First of all, your RDP or SSH port is not getting exposed over the internet, but still you are using RDP or SSH to have access via the bastion service. And number two, even the URL of getting access to the bastion service is getting exposed, but still you are protected because it need the portal to be authenticate you first, and then only via the portal the access to the VM that can be established. So this is what the bastion is. Implement Azure bastion. Clear? Close it. Now let me draw a small picture. We are aware of the various kind of platform as a service offering that are being provided to us by Azure. Correct? Can you name some of the services?
Sorry, sir, I didn't get your question. What? Could you please repeat?
I said Azure offer us various kind of platform as a service offering, and we have also undergone and came to know about various kind of platform as a service offering being offered from Azure platform. So can you name some of those kind of platform of a service offering being offered to us by Azure? Name of the
Hmm.
Azure services which are falling under platform as a service category. I think this makes the
Sir,
query.
Azure DevOps.
Okay, but Azure DevOps is not a single service. It's a vast service. A specific service name,
Sir, Microsoft 365.
that is a SaaS product, not PaaS.
Sir, Azure Load Balancer.
Sir, web apps?
App services.
Absolutely right.
App service, SQL database.
Absolutely right. So they all are actually the platform as a service offering, like Azure App Service. What they are doing, they are helping you to create a environment where from you can host an web-based application, right? Or even Azure file share. I hope you are aware of what is that service is, isn't it? Is a part of the storage service. Is a part of the storage service that offer you a file sharing ability over the internet. So consider this one is actually a such kind of offering from Azure, like Azure Azure PaaS service. You can name as Azure App Service, or maybe Azure File Share, or many more, right? Or many more. Now, how generally these services are being accessed? How generally these services are being accessed? Now, these services are nothing but internet facing service, right? They all are internet facing service. So let us consider this one as internet. So anybody they want to get access to this service, fine. All these services they have their respective URLs. You simply write down the URL and you are connected to the service over the internet. For example, if this is your home computer, if this is your home computer, okay, this is your home system, and you want to get access to this service, so you have to be first a part of the internet, and if you get connected to internet, then over the internet you can get access to the service. And we have already seen that, especially when we configured the app service. We launched our web-based application, it has given me an URL, and we type the URL in the browser of the local system and we get connected to the content, isn't it? Now consider this is a virtual network that has been provided to us by Azure. The virtual network is having subnet, and the default behavior of the subnet is, if you don't assign public IP address to any of the virtual machine, still the subnet allocate a public IP address dynamically to the VM, and the VMs are being able to get connected to internet. So these are some of my virtual machines which are having public IP address, because I need them to get access over the internet. VMs with public IP. Now tell me, when these VMs they will try to get access to the same service, how they will access it? Do they take the same route that my home system is taking? Yes or no? Means they will also get connected to internet because they are already a part of the internet, and from here they will get access to the service exactly the way my home machine usually get access to the app service or file share. Yes or no?
Sir, can you repeat the question once more time? I just.
I said I am having few virtual machines which are having public IP addresses, maybe explicitly assigned or maybe implicitly assigned.
Correct, sir.
Okay, now my question is, when these VMs, they will also try to have access to the same PaaS service, what route they will take? Is it the same route that I take from my home system, or they take some different route?
They take the same route.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right, Suman. They also take the same route. They also take the same route. The way I connect to my app service, I have been given a URL, and if I write ns lookup, then the URL, it will show me there's a public IP address, and I take the internet route to get access to that service. So the same thing is applicable for my VMs also. If I take the URL of my file share of my app service, my request from the VM, in spite of the fact they are the part of the same virtual network my service is running, or same infrastructure where from I am getting the service, my request to have access to the service will take the same path that the request from my home machine is taking place. But I consider this one as security issue. Why? The traffic that is getting generated from the virtual machine and trying to get access to the service, which is also part of the same infrastructure, should go to the public network to have access. See, who provide me the virtual network, who provide me the service, subnet, who provide me the virtual network, Azure, and who is providing me Azure PaaS services, Azure. Then why I need to go out from my own infrastructure and then once again come inside my infrastructure to have access to the service? Don't you feel there is a security issue? Can I do something that will allow me that instead of the traffic is going through this channel, no, not this path, the traffic will use something that will allow me to get access to the service internally, bypassing the public network channelization or routing through the public network? Yes, that is very much possible, and that I can do using something called Azure Service Endpoint. Fine, that I can do with something called service endpoint. Configure the service endpoint for Azure platform as a service. Service endpoint. How you are going to define a service endpoint? First of all, how you are going to define an endpoint? what is an endpoint? Can you tell me what is an endpoint? Can anyone tell me what is an endpoint in networking?
Yeah, endpoint basically where we are trying to, it's a target kind of thing.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Endpoint is something where my search ends.
Yeah.
Fine. It is basically an physical or virtual device that is connected to and exchanges the information within a network, that is basically acting as a entry or exit point of the data. We are accessing it to have access to the data, or we are accessing it to provide the data over there. Means where my search ends. Okay, where my search end. I want to get connected to somewhere and I am connected. So the device of the service where I am connected, that is been considered as a endpoint. Now, when I say a service endpoint, especially from the networking point of view, especially from the networking point of view, a service net endpoint is a secure and direct connection point that connects the virtual network, the subnet, to the backbone network infrastructure that is being used by Azure platform to connect their multiple data center together. So what I mean to say, that when I define what is a service endpoint for Azure, service endpoint is basically a kind of secure and direct connection point that help the devices from this virtual network, or to be precise from this subnet, to get connected to the services, the PaaS services which had been offered by Microsoft Azure platform, to get connected to them through the Azure backbone network infrastructure. They bypass the internet path to have access to the service. Means my traffic that never go via internet to have access to the service. Instead, as every single data center that makes the physical infrastructure of Microsoft Azure, they are connected through the backbone network infrastructure. My request for having access to the PaaS service is redirected via the backbone network infrastructure and not via the public network. Means if I consider this one as fine, let me change the color, and if I consider this one as the Azure backbone network infrastructure, Azure backbone network that connects every single virtual network with each other. Then, when I enable the service endpoint for my platform as a services, to be precise for my subnet, then the subnet, instead of taking this channel, they usually take this route. It takes the Azure backbone network and get connected to the platform as a service offering. Yes, Prashun, you can, but I will take another 5 minutes only. If it is
Okay, yes,
possible
yes.
to remain in the class for 5 minutes,
Uh,
that you can remain
okay,
further.
okay, no issues.
Okay, so that is what we call the service endpoint. Fine. So service endpoint is basically allowing the virtual network bypass the public internet. Okay, they basically bypass the public network and use the backbone network infrastructure to get access to the service. So it is considered more secure because it is not using the public network. And the entire traffic is actually routed via the public network infrastructure, and there is no additional cost that is involved in enabling the service endpoint. But please remember, there is a small limitation is all your VMs, they should have a public IP address. If you say my VMs, they are not having any public IP address, you cannot enable service endpoint. Though that public IP address will not be used to redirect your request via public network, fine, it will go by the backbone network, but it is a must that your VM, they should have a public IP address. Sometime, even though the traffic is not traveling via virtual network, sorry, they are not traveling via internet, they are remaining within the Azure network infrastructure, internal network infrastructure. But in some point where you want a very tight security, this is also sometimes considered vulnerable. Why? Because your traffic is leaving your network and you do not want the traffic to leave the network. You want your traffic to remain within your network. So at that very moment, there comes something called Azure Private Endpoint. Okay, there comes something called Azure Private Endpoint. Okay, and a private endpoint ensure that the service that you are trying to get access, okay, the service that you are trying to get access is still using a public IP address. It is still using a public IP address, and that's why maybe instead of the public network, the request is getting routed via the backbone network infrastructure. Fine, I agree. But the service will be assigned an IP address that belong to your subnet only. Service endpoint, I'm sorry, a private endpoint ensure that the past service has been allocated a IP address from your subnet, and when the virtual machines, they will try to have access to the service, they will access them using the IP address from the same subnet, and that ensure that the traffic is not going out of the subnet. So basically it is an NIC. Let me tell you, it is an NIC. A private endpoint is nothing but NIC that get associated with the service, and that NIC usually have a IP address from the subnet, and that ensure that when from the VMs the service is getting accessed, it is the traffic is remaining within the network itself. Now this entire practical setup I am going to show you in the next class. It will not take too much of time. Fine. It will not take too much of time. And after that is over, then we'll go for the next configure the name resolution and load balancing. Okay. So that's all from today's class. Thank you guys. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining. Bye bye and see you in the next class.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.